All right, awesome. There we go. All right, YouTube, good evening. Hope you are all doing well. Hope you had a great week. Duff, say hello.
Hey everyone.
So we finally made it. We are here. I think we're all alive for the most part. This is now we're done now. The election has passed. So hope that you all went out there and voted if you were prepared to. And if not, I hope you were, I guess, paying attention, that kind of thing. Like I said last time, I voted for two uh, seats, I guess you could call those, and the rest of the ballot I was not confident in, so I just abstained from that. But the that got done luckily, and that so things went well. But it looks like we have Republicans winning in the Senate and the Democrats winning in the House. So I mean, if you have been looking at any polls or any other predictions before the election, then that was basically how the what was expected to happen there. Of course, if you go back to days before, or I guess a few months before, the Democrats were obviously had a lot of power behind them, and you could see that the momentum was definitely there. And as soon as Brett Kavanaugh hit, they lost the momentum because they went freaking crazy. And of course, you don't hear about the anything with Kavanaugh anymore. So that, he's the useful political spirit they tried to use. They're done with him now. They don't care about him anymore, and so that's over with now. So they got what they wanted, and it should be interesting to see the party kind of, or the two houses being split and divided there. But and you were telling me before we got on, Duff, you were pretty much, this had made sense to you. So you're nothing too unexpected, right?
Not really, no. If you look historically, predictably, if you have a midterm, unless the president, if you have a midterm in a presidential election cycle, unless there's something which is really out of the box or really untoward, the House tends to go back to the other party. One of the things with American elections, much like Canadian elections, is if the president or the prime minister isn't on the ballot, people don't tend to get out as much, simply because there might be a bit of an illusion that it's not quite as important. So as soon as you have a president or you have, a major political figure on the ballot, people will come out anyways. It usually is to the detriment of the incumbent party to not have a president or a prime minister running in basically a midterm, simply because most people will go, well, I could go vote, but do I really have to? Whereas people on the losing side from the previous election go, okay, we should probably come out just to make sure that there's a check or a balance against whoever is in power. And that's exactly what happened. So you have the Democrats taking the House, with a few peculiarities coming off the back end of that, because they appear to have picked up seats via recounts. And Florida is being Florida all over again. And then you have the Republicans holding the House, but as things have played out this week, maybe not as comfortably as they had thought. So with the turnover of seats in the presidential election, there's actually a distinct possibility that they lose the Senate, and that was something which they thought they had locked up. So all in all, it's pretty normal, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And now we can see how I don't know if you saw this either. There was I didn't see the whole thing. Once the election results were in, I did see, I think it was a meme or something on Twitter talking about how Trump was trying to endorse Nancy Pelosi to be leader of the House. I don't know if you saw anything like that yet.
Yeah, so there was a question mark over that, whether when he said, oh, she deserves the thing, whether it was pure trollery or not. But if you remember back to the beginning of Trump's presidency, he was actually quite happy to try and work with the Democrat House leaders. And so as much as some people might read it as pure trollery, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump ends up working better with the Democrats than he did with the Republicans, despite having control of both houses.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a fear. And then we're I mean, at this point, that's the confusing part, because on the one hand, there are several things that he's talked about that are, hey, I want to get this done, but Democrats are against me. So the question maybe is, I don't know, and that can be, what do you think, Duff? Do you think that he is more against the Democrats or more against the media? Or is there kind of an even keel there, I guess.
That's an interesting thing to speculate about. Simply because when it comes to getting things done and working with the other party, within reason, Trump likes to deal. He postures a lot, but he likes to deal. And so long as he can get something out of his interactions with the Congress, I have a feeling he'll be quite amicable to make changes to his position, while still claiming that they don't understand and that they're useless and stuff like that. So where his rhetoric goes is a bit of a question mark, because he's not appealing to the same base anymore. His base didn't manage to change anything majorly, but they run the benefit of not having allowed the worst possible scenario to play out, which would be, for Republicans, Democrats taking both houses convincingly. And there's also questions around what type of Republican Party does Trump have now, because people would have said that, oh, they got rid of a lot of the deadwood, the people who were somewhat skeptical of Trump. But that might not be a good thing. But what are your thoughts on that there, AAA?
Yeah, I think, it's, Trump likes Trump. So that's kind of my take on it. And I definitely think that he will work with who will work with him. And as we've discussed before, there are several times where we've said, oh, hey, this is going to be a great thing. He's going to stop them, whatever. Here's the plan. And then he walks into the room with, the Republican people on his side, and he'll be against the Democrats. Go, yep, here's what we're going to have. And then he'll just walk away. And that happened with, I think it was Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They said, here's the plan. And he goes, yep, he walked in, walked out, and it was done. And then Paul Ryan and Mitch were like, what? So I definitely think it's possible there, and that's more of a behind closed doors. So I think that maybe it is it's how Trump presents himself. So to everyone else, to his base, he goes, hey, the media, the Democrats, they're awful, they're terrible. I want to build a wall. I want to do all of these things, and the Democrats won't let me do it. So they're just terrible, awful, horrible, and whatever I do is going to be wrong. So Democrats are terrible. However, behind closed doors, maybe Trump says, hey, you know what? I have to go and get voted back in. Here are the things I say, but at the same time, you guys want to do this, and let's just pretend to get other things done. So I think it's, he tries to play both sides, and as a businessman, that's not, terribly hard to believe that he wants to go and get his way, and there are pluses and minuses to that, of course. Sometimes our interests are aligned, sometimes they're not, but it's, I definitely think that it'll be interesting now to see if what happens, just because he has, quote unquote, helped his base or his side win the Senate. So great, was that so they will be able to continue on there, which is a whole different question too. But I think that out loud he's gonna hate both the media and the Democrats. In private, I think he'll still hate the media, but he might not hate the Democrats. But another as I guess as I think of that. I don't know, Jeff. What do you think? Do you think that Trump helped or hurt, or did you think he made a difference when he campaigned at for specific states? Like, for example, when he campaigned with Ted Cruz, was that good, bad, or do you think that really mattered at all in the end?
I know that Ben Shapiro and others have had quite a few things to say about this, and their breakdown is essentially this: the fact that he switched from what could have been a clear winner, which is what's his name? Kavanagh was treated abysmally. Look at all the things the Democrats were willing to apparently lie about, or to try and facilitate as best they could, in order to make this a huge issue. And instead of going with that, going with, oh no, we're going to be invaded by 1,000 people trying to cross the border, 10,000 people trying to cross the border. And that's not really much of a winner, let's say. It's easier to go after people and say, like, look, your side is more morally corrupt than you are willing to admit. Just look at what they did to Brett Kavanaugh, and why is it that we haven't heard about any of his accusers in the aftermath? And why is it that now the Justice Department has been able to pursue cases against some of the accusers for lying under oath? But that's not a Trumpy thing. Because ironically, for Trump, it's always the new and shiny thing, which he's more interested in. And like many politicians, when Trump gets the ability to deploy the military, of course, it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. And that seems to be where his attention went to. You could also levy some complaints against him in terms of Congress, that he didn't actually go for Congress people, spent most of his time with Senate-related people, and then after the fact, and this is what I find so terribly Trumpy, and not in a good way, he badmouths the senators that didn't manage to win. He's like, well, they didn't embrace us. They didn't do things with us. And it's like, well, wouldn't it be better to have someone who's supposedly in your party in that seat, even if they don't do everything you want? And this, once again, I think reveals the fact that for Trump, he can talk with both right-leaning Democrats who are very business orientated and left-leaning as well as center-right Republicans, and be like, okay, well, this is business orientated. Let's talk about business. Social issues, on the other hand, aren't really Trump's forte. And anyone who would have tried to run a platform on social issues would have a hard time embracing Trump. So makes for some interesting bedfellows there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I guess, and just to add to that, I think it is sad that, you know, as much as the media go, if anyone listened to, I think it was MSNBC or CNN where Van Jones was on saying, oh, hey, you know, Van Jones just goes, hey, we've got, you know, this demographic, all these people, you know, here are voted in, and we are so diversified, and oh, look at all these senators and new seats we've got here. We are so cool. We have so much diversity, and that's, you know, how the Democrats go. At the same time, they do not at all comment on how many female. I think there was one. I think it was either senator or congresswoman. We've had a lot of women that are now in the Senate. One, I think, is the first Asian female, and I don't actually remember where she is. But I mean, again, all these, you know, hey, feminism, here we go. Here's all the people getting into office, and you kind of forget about them because they're on the right. So it's interesting to see the, you know, you call and say you want equality, and yet when it's kind of happening, you go, oh well, okay, and then, you know, nothing's said about that kind of thing. So that's just kind of sad there. But anyway, I guess, and that leads me to, you know, since this has happened now, I guess again, as the title is today, Duff, what is your opinion? Do you think that there has been a blue wave?
Um, it depends what you mean by a wave. So if we look at the breakdown of how the houses played out. So in the House, the Democrats have 225 seats. The Republicans ended up with 200. 218 being what you needed to control the House. So the fact is that so long as 201 Democrats vote one way, the Republicans are effectively locked out of power. So is that a wave? Well, compared to the previous election, yes, they gained quite a few seats. However, a wave kind of would imply a shellacking that goes across both houses. And that didn't actually pan out. The Republicans ended up losing a couple seats in the Senate, but not enough to make a change. So you still have a balance of power. To my mind, a wave would have been both houses to one party. In this case, it would have been the Democrats, or that things were so close on both. So literally it would be like 47 to 49 in the House, in the Senate. And in the House, put it at something like 215 to 205, right? But didn't pan out. So when they're talking about a wave, it's about measuring how many seats are gained against a statistical average. And it looks like the Democrats are right on the line of the high end of that average, if not slightly over. So that's not really a wave once again. That's sort of within the mean. Not really comforting to people, I'd imagine, on the Republican side of things, but also not so horribly out of sync with the historical trends that seem to follow the American political scene.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think I agree. I don't think there was much of a wave. I think exactly what we thought would happen did happen. And, you know, if we had the election before the Kavanagh, then we might see a bit different, and it if we had the election before Kavanaugh, then I do think the House would have been taken by the Democrats, and I also think that it would be a very good shot that the Democrats could take the Senate, and that would be really, really, really bad, having all those people there. So that'd be terrifying. After Brett Kavanaugh, the map changes, so which is pretty scary. Now, at the same time, because and again we can bicker over definitions, but I would agree. I don't think that the wave really happened. I think that this has just set in motion uh, ways for Trump to, you know, in a way he kind of gained because he kept the Senate, and now he has a Democratic majority in the House. So, in theory, I guess you could say, you know, if something doesn't get done, Trump can go and blame the Democrats for, hey, you know, they're blocking me. At the same time, I've also heard various stories about Nancy Pelosi trying to go, and I think she had I don't remember if this was her celebratory speech when she said, oh, hey, the Democrats won, but I saw a video of her endorsing disorders or something in those lines. Like, you know, it was a Medicare for all thing, and she was endorsing something else. And then you've also got, I think his name's Peter Schiff, and he is another kind of leader in the House at the moment too. So, in one hand, it's bad that they're there. On the other hand, as we have discussed previously, the Democrats are really, really crazy, and now they get to put their crazy on display. So maybe this can be an advantage for Trump to say, "Hey, you know what? I can't get these things. I can't get anything done, and these people are crazy." But to your point, as discussed before, maybe Trump goes, "Hey, I don't want to do what the Republicans just say. They're really stuck on their ways. Hey, Democrats, here we go." So I guess I think it is a could be more of a win overall potentially. But, I don't know, Duff, do you think that even with the, Democrats majority, Trump could still use this to his advantage?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But once again, I have a hard time with our discussion simply because the nature of politics or the political discussion in the states really does seem to boil down to characters and personalities to a larger degree than what we see here in Canada. And when it comes to the president, well, the president's job is simply to, oversee parts of the country, go to war if you need to go to war, and try and get his party or the other party to go along with what he kind of wants to do. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of what bills look like and other stuff, that actually goes to a bunch of House committees. So it's this weird sensation of focus on personalities, but realizing that the nuts and bolts are something entirely different. And here's where the posturing really starts to come out. So, for as much as Trump is a big personality and saying things, well, you can also say that about the leaders of both parties, particularly in the Democrats right now, where you had Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, and others saying basically untoward things and being like, it's the end of the world because of X, Y, and Z, and the world didn't seem to come to an end. But as soon as she gets appointed House Speaker again, Nancy Pelosi turns around and be like, oh yeah, true, we want moderation, we want conciliation. Simply because the position of House Speaker requires you to be on at least speaking terms with the other party. Because if you don't, even though technically you have enough votes to get everything through that you would like, well, the other party has the Senate. And in truth, not everyone in your party has the same alignment as you do. And it would be really funny to see if what happens is middle of the road Democrats versus the emerging social democrats. And it would be hilarious if it turns out that they dislike the social democrats so much simply because they want too many things without any clear structure to push them forward on, that they actually start voting more in favor of Republican leaning bills than they do with regards to, let's say, socialist leaning bills, which are getting put forward by that part of their party.
That's true, that's true. Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, I think that Trump will use wherever he can to his advantage, so, I mean, hopefully we can that's kinda what Obama did, to be fair, when he had I think that was in his last term, the Republicans were the majority, and he goes, "Yep, I can't get anything done, it's not my fault, blah, blah, blah." So, there is that possibility that Trump does the same thing and says, "Hey, they're against me, what can I do? Help me out here." At the same time, I've also been told that it is a great it's great that, this happened, and he kept the Senate because now we're able to. Trump can get through various many judges at various different levels, which he's done that already a little bit. But now he's got the ability to, keep on going on there. And if, who knows what happens to the Supreme Court, we might get some other people to step down potentially. And then now we've got enough senators to really get people through there. And then again, that's a lifetime position. So that'd be really awesome. So, I think that overall it went well, and time will tell if, Trump uses this his advantage for the Senate and how Democrats will deal with their majority in the House and that kind of thing. But I guess and I guess the bigger question now is, does this, for 2020, is this good or bad? I mean, I think that the good news is the Republicans kept the Senate, but the bad news is and this is kind of what Ben Shapiro said on his show this week. Both parties are taking the wrong lesson from what the election results had. So the Democrats say, "Hey, we need to go crazy," and the Republicans are saying, "Hey, we did okay here. We can kind of calm down." So it'll be interesting to see what the plans will be from now until 2020, and what the strategies will be. Of course, we have Democrats wanting to, do the looking for 2020 already, and wanting to have debates there, and we have polls out showing who's gonna go and be the next candidate, from Biden to Kamala Harris to whomever else. Even Hillary Clinton might run again, which would be pretty crazy there. But I don't know. Is it too early to plan out 2020 there, Duff? Or do you think it's is it even in the realm, or is it something we should think about?
Oh no! As Ben Shapiro used as an analogy, it's like Christmas shopping. The moment Thanksgiving's done, Christmas is already Christmas stuff is already coming out. So literally from now till the end of his term, it is all about the next election, and this is where we're going to have to see if Trump can adapt, because it's a new scenario. Democrats did end up pulling in a bunch of social democrat representatives into the House, right? So you have Cortez, you have who are the other two women? I forget what their names were. But is he going to be able to look at that and be like, okay, let's go after these ones and point out just how silly it was for them to elect those particular candidates, and then start to be like, well, if they can't rein in that side of their own party, why is it that you'd want to vote for the Democrats in the next election? I think another thing is on issues, he needs to find a new way to pitch basically border control, and do it in an amicable way. So, like, as odd as it might sound, make the wall sound nice. Make it sound like, look, this way we can ensure that we don't have to separate families. This way we can ensure that people will automatically go to the appropriate checkpoints, and we can actually bring more people in because they're going through the proper channels. This way, by building the wall, we can get those people into the states that we need to fill those jobs, which a lot of people here don't want to do. So, humanize the wall. I think that's something he'll have to do. As well as, let's say, be better at calling out the media. So follow up, don't get into dogfights for dogfights' sake. I'm actually quite happy that he ended up removing, what was the White House reporter for CNN that got removed recently?
Jim Acosta, that was going to be one of the other points, yeah.
Yeah. So remove Jim Acosta and then immediately change strategies so you're very conciliatory with the remaining ones, and to be uber polite. And then if they're not polite, then you can be like, oh, look at this. I try and be nice. I try to extend the hand of friendship, and they treat me so poorly. That would be a really, I think, smart play. And it would be one which would keep the media scratching its head. Because as soon as they start to figure out what Trump's playbook is, he's not going to be able to benefit to the same degree that he has from his trollery. And I think that playbook shift is coming.
Yeah, that's fair. I think you're right about, the whole, "Hey, here's my hand, and bat away, and then you can hit them, and he'll either." as Mr. Shapiro says, he hits a nail or hits a puppy. So one of the two things will happen there. But since you brought it up, did you see Trump and Jimmy Acosta go at each other with the latest press briefing?
I did not see the whole video, but it literally boiled down to Jim Acosta thinks of himself as a celebrity, and therefore, because he's been allowed to be a celebrity, he just kept on going after the president in the question and answer period without actually asking questions, like literally putting forward, here's the premise, here's where you've gone wrong. Don't you know that you've gone wrong? And it's like, well, that's not actually a question. And for the president actually to be fed up enough to be like, okay, geez, I'm done with this. And then for Acosta not to turn over the mic, it just shows that he thinks of himself in a way that goes beyond what a reporter ought to. And the whole thing where it's like, did he physically assault the intern who tried to take the mic? And it's like, well, I think that's a non-issue. I think it was just silly. And hopefully what this will lead to is a more productive question and answer period versus the Trump and Acosta show.
Sure, sure. That's fair, and that's the and I didn't see the whole thing either. I just saw the moment where he kind of said no, 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 and get rid of get rid of yourself there. And actually, I think the story afterwards, Stephen talked about, oh hey, this is oh, what was the phrase they used? They talked about comparing him to, I don't want to say it was the Nazi regime, but it might have been no, I can't remember the word they used. They were describing comparing Trump to, I want to say, almost a 1984 period of, hey, this is the freedom of speech, freedom of press, and you're just, trying to shut them down, the whole kind of thing. And they just went off and about how it was being terrible and awful there. But no, it sounds as if you are happy this, and then when just the Jim Acosta was the only voice that you were saying should kind of, calm down. There's no other person there, right?
Well, I don't know enough about other reporters to make comments about them, but I would actually appreciate an oppositional reporter. Like I actually like reporters who can make politicians sweat. They are good to have, but they're good in that they ask questions which allow the politician to hang themselves, as opposed to what Jim Acosta was doing, which is essentially saying, here's the way it is, here's the way it is, here's the way it is, and you're bad. And it's like, well, that doesn't actually make the president sweat, and it doesn't actually seem to get at the heart of much. So, for instance, if you had a CNN White House correspondent go, well, Mr. President, isn't it true that when it comes to immigration, we don't actually process people fast enough to fill the need for jobs that we have currently? And the president goes, well, I don't know. And it's like, well, we have this study which says this. Wouldn't it be better, based on this study, if maybe we had a faster vetting process for illegals? And Trump would have to be like, well, yeah, I guess we would. And it's like, well, gotcha, right? But you can't actually make yourself into a celebrity by asking that sort of questions. Ergo, people who want the big seat in the White House, press gallery, want to get their names out there by being combative and noticeable. But that's not a good way for the press to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, at the same time, they could ask a question like that, but I don't know. Trump's pretty good at. I mean, that was even with the Kavanagh hearing. They go, "Hey, we think that you are potentially, not fit to judge Kavanagh based on your history, and what about that?" Which was, kind of a legitimate question because has been accused of had sexual allegations in the past, and Trump's kind of talked about it and never really answered the question. So, on the one hand, yeah, that's a possible gotcha question, but I also feel as though Trump is not. He would just, kind of. Oh yeah, well I know about that, and then completely is like, I understand your question, and just completely talk about something else. So I feel as though it could kind of go both ways there, and the media just need to again, as you pointed out, I don't think that given what we've seen so far, I doubt the media really understands the whole game of oh hey, look at the shiny thing, and then he goes the other direction. If they do, that thing could change. But it's funny to hear that the media has not learned the lesson of, hey, you know what? We're being tricked, we're being fooled, or all these gotchas are happening here, and Trump, no matter what they do, they keep trying to hit, and they think they really hit him, but they really keep on missing. So it's it is interesting to see the it's interesting to see how blatantly obvious their true feelings are now, as opposed to, oh, the here's what we're gonna say, and here's what they do, and that can even be seen at the go back to the rallies. When Trump goes to the rallies, it's like there's thousands of people there. When Obama was campaigning, he got a puddle of people, but it was not nearly as big because, again, as you were pointing out, some people don't realize that they're not as important anymore. Jim Acosta wants to be a celebrity. Obama still thinks he's important enough to be a celebrity, but he's not drawing the crowds that are necessary to do that. He's a good talker, and he likes to take credit for the things that Trump has done, but those things aren't there anymore. So it'll be interesting to see how much more of the uh, game is being played with the media. All these elections are quote unquote done now. Of course, we'll be hearing more about them later on. But on the bright side, there too, at least we can get rid of all the political commercials. And as a bit of a digression, I don't know if other I would imagine that up in Canada there are several commercials for political pundits for election years as there are in the U.S. Or is that as big of a deal here as it is with you there, Duff?
It's different simply because we don't have as many news networks as you guys do. But in the previous electoral cycle, actually two previous, when we saw Stephen Harper get voted out of office, the Conservatives actually ended up shooting themselves in the foot because for the two previous electoral cycles before that, they kept on running attack ads even when it wasn't really leading into an election. And people actually got sick of that. And so a lot of the base for the Conservatives actually looked at what the Conservatives were doing and be like, hang on, wait, we're not nasty. We don't want to be nasty. And it might have actually prevented a lot of people from getting out to vote. And you can see this by how they got shellacked in two previous elections and why the Liberal Party gained as many seats as they did, as well as the NDP. So in Canada, yes, we do have electioneering and we do have we do have political ads, but we don't necessarily have the same affiliation between a particular news outlet and a particular party. So we don't get sort of a glove, what about this person? You should vote for this person ads in the same way that you seem to in the States. Because even here in Canada, I was getting YouTube ads for people running in congressional districts in the States. And I'm like, why the heck am I seeing these? And during Canadian election years, there are some of those, but we don't get nearly as many.
Interesting. Yeah, and I wish that there was a way they could tell you, hey, by the way, man, I voted. Go away. I wish there was a button to press. Like, yep, I did get no more ads. We're good now. No more. It's gonna be okay. So I mean, I'm glad it's done. I'm glad that those are all over with now, and we can hopefully move on. But and I would be very sad if I didn't cover. This is another bit of a digression, but like I said, we are kind of thankfully ending one chapter. I did want to mention. I know that, and I don't know a whole lot about this event, unfortunately, but I wanted to make note of it. This week there was a unfortunate shooting in California, I believe, with quite a few dead and with a person that was mentally unstable. And we hope that all the victims there are going to be okay. And just a very, very sad event. But Jeff, you might know more about this than I do, but I think you said before you did know about the event, correct?
Yeah. So this shooting happened last week, and the fellow who ended up doing it ends up having a resume similar in some ways to the Parkland shooter, where he was someone who was known to authorities, someone who had mental issues, yet didn't actually receive a referral to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, to help groups or other things like that. So I'm currently on CNN, and so the shooter, here's sort of the hit list about him, is he had previous run-ins with the law. He was formerly a Marine, and his training would appear to have played a part in how effective he was during his shooting spree, because he did use smoke canisters as well as cover while he was shooting people, and hence the very high death count, which is up to 12 now, I think. And if you're looking for a perfect storm, giving somebody training on how to effectively make use of cover and how to make use of small arms and be accurate is pretty terrifying. And that he was not given the help he needed despite prior run-ins with the police is also a bit of a condemnation of the system at large as well.
Right. Well, and there's no. Do we know why he was not treated properly?
No, that's information which hasn't been released, and most likely it was because the police would say, well, he's the problem, but he's not a huge problem because he hasn't committed a grievous crime yet. And you can't really arrest people for not committing a crime, even though you suspect they might. But it still would have been nice to see more options for referral or a referral to some sort of help or treatment plan. The thing, which is the kicker, is, according to the article, most of his friends would say actually he seemed to be a pretty stable guy. So maybe he was pretty adept at keeping his more murderous tendencies or his more psychotic moments to himself. And that'll always be a problem with people who have mental disorders and mental problems, especially as they learn how to cope and hide the things, as opposed to learning how to deal with their problems and getting on a proper treatment regimen.
Yeah, that's really really sad to hear that how it had to end overall. But I mean, I guess and that's I think actually there was even correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't some of the survivors from the Las Vegas shooting at this event too, or is that am I getting that mixed up?
There was a story. I don't actually know too much about it. About one of the victims of this shooting having been in a previous shooting or nearby a previous shooting. So to survive one mass shooting and then to be taken out in another, that's a lottery you definitely don't want to win.
It's very very true, and I also think there to mention the again I didn't this was a fairly new story when I read about it, so I didn't actually get a chance to read a whole lot. But I also did read a few things where during this shooting there were several men who tried to go and just save the women. I don't remember what they did, but they were guys stepping up saying, I don't want anyone else to die, and I'd take me instead. So again, I don't know if you read that at all, but that's another men being heroic, and so maybe we should calm down with the whole hey, men are putting us down, and realize that in fact men are trained, well, not maybe trained is the wrong word, but do have the wanting to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to protect my friend, family, all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure there were men there that were going to try to protect a complete stranger. So that's just we should something to come together around overall. But no, and unfortunately, this is like many of the other shootings. I'm sure it'll be a great headline, and then it'll go into the distance. But it's sad to see. I want to say this is the number 300 and something this year, but I don't know, Duff. I think we've had enough mass shootings, right? This sounds like it's just, going on and on and on over and over again.
Yeah, that's a problem which the U.S. needs to figure out some way to deal with and to come together over. It's not to say that there aren't mass shootings in other places. It's just that the frequency with which it seems to happen and the media coverage that it gets, it does leave a black mark, I know, for the people in the US who are feeling, what it's like to have these things happening, but also internationally, because the US is actually a fairly safe place to go, like a remarkably safe place to go. But imagine you're a tourist and you look, you're like, oh my goodness, 11 people, 12 people get shot up in a bar. What if one of those people were me? And it's also one of those statistics which really plays against the idea that the U.S. is a place that has its shit together, essentially, and that it's a world leader, and then it is a world leader in things like human rights and safety and other stuff. Now, is that actually untrue? Is the U.S. not generally a safe place to be? Well, yeah, of course it's untrue. The U.S. is safe. It has rules. It has laws. If the police show up, they're not likely to ask for money in order to do their job, kind of thing. But it does lead to all sorts of questions internationally and also internally, because you don't really want to have to think about the fact that it's like, I'm in a public space. Am I going to get shot?
Yeah, that's true. It's terrifying to have to even go and have that, thought in the back of your mind, going, "Hey, this has happened here, and I used to be safe, but am I allowed to walk out the door?" And then it's the debate never ends, unfortunately, and that just brings on the what about if we have make this law or this kind of gun control, and then a whole slew of conversations there too. So there's never a one of those problems that's really sad because there's not a it's very hard to agree on the hey, if this would have happened then would have prevented if this law was in place then, and those are always the hardest things to come to terms with. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that's a terrible thing to happen there, and hopefully the hopefully we can stop having these stories. This is just awful to keep having the same or very similar problems, and what do you do about that kind of thing? So it's just terrible there. But
Here's the
sorry, what is
sales
up there?
pitch for the Siri for firearms. So get a company to produce, or several companies to produce little smart AIs which you can attach to any model of firearm, and it has a GPS on it. So you're at your home, somebody kicks in the door, you run over to your firearms case, you open it, you run over to where you store the ammunition, you get that, and then you go, gun Siri, home invader, can I use my firearm? And it goes, absolutely. And you defend yourself. Somebody takes a firearm into a public space and they want to have a mass shooting. So they go, gun Siri, I wish to kill a lot of people. And gun Siri goes, no, that's not acceptable, and disables the weapon.
Well, and then sure, that's an option. And firstly, on the 30,000-foot view, that'd be great. Of course, I wish AI were that cool. With we don't do this kind of things, but uh, if it could work that way, that'd be great. If you could have a voice and print that were that accurate, that could be great. But then that also kind of lies with the okay, great. Now Siri has, and I guess I'll play a bit of devil's advocate here too. Of course, with anything technology written, it goes down to the okay, let's go give this thing to Google, and now Google knows, hey, I've got a AR-15, a machine gun, whatever what you want to call at my house. Awesome. So Google has this application. They can go and say, hey, I'm going to allow you to fire the gun or not. All can also probably track your location. So then that brings up the question of, okay, now we're going to have a full-on firearms registry. And I guess so my next question for you is, Duff, are you advocating potentially for that? Or is this just more of the being able to use the safety or not? Because the firearm registry, to be fair, is that that's a potential argument, right?
um, yeah, no, I could definitely see where you're coming from with that. And the thing is, in terms of data, which would be nice for the public to have access to, a registry would be interesting. But in terms of the mechanics and what it could be used for, yes, there are a lot of questions. But I do think that if you even took the technology and had it to be location and scenario specific, if you could get everybody to attach gun Siri to their firearms, that would be an interesting thing to see. So it's like you have concealed carry in your state. Someone that pulls a gun and you pull yours out and go, they have pulled an illegal gun, unlock firing mechanism, and it does. That would be an interesting sort of futuristic take. There are a lot of problems with it, absolutely. But what are some solutions that we can actually apply to this? Because the single greatest group that you have to watch out for when it comes to firearms are people who are not following the rules with regards to firearms for any number of reasons. So in that bar, is it quite possible that there were other people who had firearms? Maybe. Did they discharge them in some way which was illegal? No. So they're not the problem. It's always the person who doesn't follow the rules, which becomes the problem for everybody else. So some sort of solution, or actually talking about it in terms of how do we make sure that people are following this? What sort of stipulations do we add? So let's just say when it comes time to when it comes to a police call with someone who has firearms, it might be something where you go, okay, we're going to recommend a mandatory referral, or at least give you the card of someone who you could go and talk to if we suspect you might have some underlying mental conditions, and keep track of the fact that you've handed out these cards to people, and maybe follow up. And maybe even have the NRA follow up, where it's like, 2 weeks after an incident where the police came to your home, nothing bad happened, but you have firearms. An NRA counselor shows up and goes, "Hey, I'm just here to check in with you and see how you're doing, and just want to make sure that you're okay. And if you're not, well, here's some resources that you can have." Just to take the stigma away, but also to have that follow up that would hopefully help prevent instances like this.
Yeah, I mean, I do see your point there, and that's fair. And I guess so. I'm a little still, I guess, confused. Are you so you are for the gun registry, or maybe I just misunderstood what you're saying?
Um, in practice, no. In theory, sure. So it's like this. So in Canada, over the past 20 years, we've had a couple different attempts at registering all the firearms in Canada. Turns into a logistical nightmare, and a logistical nightmare that puts an inordinate amount of power in the hands of the federal government in terms of if something screws up or if something gets misfiled, let's say. Uh, but as a statistic to say, we have this many firearms and we have this many types of firearms and this many of this type, as someone who might actually be a collector, it might be useful to be like, hey, actually, there's a bunch of this type of Winchester, whatever rifle in circulation. And actually, I can track down who might actually own them and put it on a message board being like, I know that you actually have these types of firearms. I'd like to purchase some legally. So there are upsides. The downsides in the United States, of course, is that with your Second Amendment, one of the reasons why you want to have guns is because you don't want the government to become tyrannical or to start enforcing laws in a way that dispossesses the people. So the feeling behind the registry is very different for you guys as opposed to here. So logistically speaking, it's stupid to try and do it here in Canada. But from the idea that a registry could be useful, I don't really have a huge problem with it in that way.
So you are you understanding and agreeing, or only, I guess, do you have any you I guess, because you just said, you understand that the in America we say, okay, against tyranny, and does that would that, I guess, since you're living there, does that say, okay, I get that, or like, okay, I get it, but like I don't think it's worthwhile, or is that that kind of opinion?
No, more so I boil it down this way, AAA. In the US context, I can understand that there are other concerns with regards to the registry that go beyond simply the government knowing that you have X many of this type of firearm. Um, in regards to registries at large, the problem is that you're trying to register things which have been purchased in the past and may have changed hands quite a bit. So it becomes a logistical nightmare to do it. So in the Canadian context, it becomes more of the logistics is the bigger problem. Whereas in the American context, it becomes we have a system that does not trust the government. So them trying to actually bring about a registry is the problem. So it's kind of like different strokes for different folks there.
I guess that's fair. No, I was just curious. I know that of course you mentioned that before, that there are in America and Canada, we think about guns differently, and that's, it's band assault rifles, and the AR-15s are terrible. So that there's all of those two arguments as well. But yeah, I agree. I think that because you were describing the buying a gun here and trading with this guy, and who knows where like it's gonna go. Well, yeah, I agree that's an issue too. But at the same time, another uh, possible issue I would see, and this is not even regarding the I guess, tyranny is an issue, but I was even thinking past the, okay, well, great. Let's say, we'll go for Canada just because it'd be much harder to do in the U.S. But let's just say, hey, you do the gun registry, and let's just pretend that it was, you did a survey or a test. Say, hey, for these 100 or even 50 people, we're gonna go and track what they buy. Okay, great. Now we have the issue of, let's just pretend that there are few enough people that we can actually track or put some kind of a location device on the gun, so we might not exactly know who it is, we know where it is, and that kind of thing. Well, then there's the issue of, in my opinion, another nightmare scenario is we know who has what. Okay, great. If that information gets into the wrong hands, okay, great. You've got, you boast about, oh, I'm awesome. I've got all these guns. Well, now you piss off the wrong guy. They go with someone else in a higher up position. Say, hey, you know what, man? This guy's being a pain, so I need to go get him. Oh, hey, wait, man. He's got these guns. Well, he's got guns. Let's just go and destroy. We'll up the ante and prepare, and then you have a small wars going on there. So I think the yes, I guess the tyranny is definitely a thing, but I mean, I even think that potentially even disregarding the government taking over, just get some person with enough influence saying, hey, you know what, I don't like him, and I don't have to do anything. I know exactly what this person has. And again, this you might have already covered that point, but I just wanted to, I guess, get a little bit more detailed and see if that's another situation, or is that a new point of view potentially.
Yeah, no. I would put it in the context of what if you have a politician who is completely anti-firearm and goes, "Look, these people have these firearms. Isn't that so terrible?" So the knowledge of what firearms people have could actually be disadvantageous for people owning firearms in general, especially if there can be enough of a populist movement behind, let's say, banned an SKS, right? I mean, people should not have SKSs. And look at all these people who have SKSs, and that's a semi-automatic rifle. So yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying there. But I would think by and large, the problem across both registry versus non-registry is that if there was a registry, the people who are going to use their guns for untoward means will not register. And the people who do register, in a lot of cases, will suffer from the fact that the bad use of firearms will be held as being more of a social vehicle than those people who use their firearms responsibly. So it might be a double negative in that case. And yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, just curious. Wanted to see, and I'm glad you're here to remind. It's interesting to have the, the I don't say anti-gun, but the two different sides of here's how we think about guns, here's how the other side thinks about guns, and we are very much the government is we are fearful of, and you kind of are in a different. Guns aren't on our, as a. I don't know. I would imagine guns in Canada. The topic is not as hot, or maybe that's not true, or I don't know how you guys are.
Definitely not as frequently in the news as what happens with the States. And it's mostly because of the nature of how firearms are regulated in Canada. We don't have a right to firearms. To own a firearm is a privilege, which is extended to us by the RCMP on behalf of the government. So yes, we can have firearms. But in Canada, you would run into some serious problems if you managed to defend yourself with one of your firearms, particularly because that might imply that you are not storing them correctly. Because your ammo needs to be in one box, which is locked differently. Where you're storing your firearms needs to be somewhat separate, and they need to have gun locks on them at all times. So it does become different, because here, if you were to use a firearm in self-defense, you might actually have some blowback against you, because it's like, well, how come you did have that firearm so readily available? That would appear to imply that you weren't storing it correctly. Whereas I know in many places in the States, castle doctrine rules, which means that if somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them, there are no questions asked as to how you had the firearm with which to shoot them.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I would also imagine there are just fewer there too. But I don't know. Are you? I don't need to know necessarily if you are. Are you? Would you like to own a firearm, there, Duff, or are you good?
I have no issue with people owning firearms, and I also love it that most responsible firearm owners, including myself, go through a course, and we are given lots of reading and lots of literature, and we also can do follow-up exams. We have supplementary courses which we can go and take if you want to do stuff for hunting, if you want to learn about skeet shooting or target practice or all that stuff. So I think so long as the laws benefit people for following them, and also allow people to make use of firearms, to collect firearms for their own reasons that are not problematic in any way, that's all good. It's more so the people who don't get the training, who don't get licensed, who purchase firearms for untoward means. Those are the people I have problems with.
No, I think that's fair. And actually, just since you mentioned that, I also do not plan to get a few myself. That might sound a little crazy. No, I just the variety is what I think I go for. Just whether it be pistol, rifle, whatever, what have you, to shoot kind of thing. Because I mean, I think it's definitely worth having there to do too. And actually, uh, with that being said, I definitely think for any of our listeners, even if you don't plan to ever own one, I definitely would advise going and taking a course, learning about the guns, any gun, the difference between semi-automatic and automatic, the different kinds, the different gauges, the loadouts, what they are used for, defense, all that kind of fun stuff. Because it's one of those issues where, yes, I know people get afraid of describing, oh, hey, it's a gun, we're terrified of it. Well, usually we're afraid of things we don't get. So I definitely think it's worthwhile for us, again, even if you don't want to ever shoot the gun, just to be able to have the knowledge of, hey, there's a safety. Hey, I need to know these things just to understand. There's actually, I think, Crowder did a video on people who were against the second, or just against guns in general, and he actually brought them to range and had them shoot, and they learned the proper etiquette for guns. And in the end, he said he suggested and wanted to see if they actually wanted to buy a firearm, and they went through the whole process. And at the end, they said, "Yeah, if I were to get a gun, I would choose this one." So it was interesting to see, going from completely terrified to understanding how the process worked overall. And it's a very good idea, no matter whether or not you actually want to use it. But it's something I think it's at least, I mean, the education is what's needs is the scary part to be had, that kind of thing. But anyway, with that being said, I wanted to leave off on a much happier note. I don't know, Duff. Just curious. Have you ever seen the movie Days of Futures Past in the X-Men series?
Yep. Nope, I didn't see that one.
Cool. So I'm guessing you are already remembering the scene I'm describing. If any of you have listened to watch the Ben Shapiro show, on the things he likes, one of the mentions was, and I should have the video. It's called Ben Quicksilver Shapiro versus Heckler's video, and it's a very very funny video. So for any of you who haven't seen X-Men Days of Future Past, obviously an X-Men series, it's kind of weird because the movie takes place both in the future and in the past, and it's very watch the movie. I can't remember exactly what happens, but it's a very interesting movie because of the characters and the previous movies and the kind of thing. So it was an interesting movie. But anyway, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a scene in the movie where there is Xavier, Magneto, and Quicksilver, and they are, I think, escaping somewhere, and they wind up in a kitchen area. Well, in this scene, before anything happens, and I should also say, if you don't know anything about the X-Men, they all have powers, of course. They're all X-Men, and Xavier he's telepathic. He can read people's minds. Magneto can move metal, and Quicksilver is just really really fast. He's the Flash or the Flash DC, different universe, but he's a really fast hero. He is they walk into a kitchen and there's all these officers and guards there. And before anything can happen, Quicksilver actually just runs around the room and he tries to make sure that anything that can go bad goes bad on the officers. So he puts a fist in their face and that kind of thing. Well, anyway, this YouTuber, let me see if I can find this again. He is I guess it's called Coop's channel. He made a short video of and again, this is one of the things. Just watch it. It's in the links in the description of people going and hecklers being at Ben's speech and Ben talking very fast and taking them out in the same kind of style. So either way, it's a very funny video. I definitely recommend you should watch it. Def, have you seen this video yet?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
I definitely recommend you watch that. It's a very, very funny video. If you are a frequent listener of Ben's show, there are a few other inside jokes that they write down. I won't ruin them for you, but they're very, very funny and kind of thing. So it's a very, very funny video, and I think you should also watch that. And actually, that being said, I also plan to see Mr. Shapiro this Tuesday. This week, he's supposed to come to another the OSU, and so I'm going to hopefully get in there. And even if not, I think going to the event and just watching all the protests happen and just getting a different point of view, and because I've never been to one of those events, so I think it'd be pretty cool there. So hopefully I get to talk to Ben. We'll see what happens there, but I will make sure to mention all the festivities on the next podcast there. But I think I just wanted to end on a much happier note there. So again, guys, go check that out. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Hope no one's too sad about the election results, because again, I don't think it is that bad. No doom and gloom. We'll make it. If if things go good or bad, I think we'll make it either way. So any last thoughts there, Duff?
No, not really. I look forward to hearing about your adventures, though, with Mr. Shapiro.
I agree. I hope I can ask him a question. I mean, again, I saw a video recently where someone just was at the event and wanted to see all the craziness happen there. So hopefully he can the craziness isn't too bad, or maybe hopefully, I mean, it's a public event, so maybe I can film some stuff and we can get some views there too. But either way, it should be interesting to see the how crazy things actually are and that kind of thing. But either way, like I said, next week I will report back to you, let you guys know, and until next time, hope everyone has a great week. Stay warm or cold or whatever it may be, and everyone have a good one. All right, sign off there, Duff.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.